Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Leading You. Thank you so much for being here. This episode is something quite personal, but something that I really wanted to do for those of you out there who are part of the sandwich generation. I feel like this isn't spoken about enough, but is so prevalent in particularly women, but also for men in their late 40s, their 50s, and 60s, where they're managing their life and also all of a sudden having to manage their parents as well. And they're stuck in the middle of trying to work through that quite challenging dynamic. And it's something that has happened to me. And I just wanted to do this to say that I really see you. And hopefully, what I'm sharing today will validate you in terms of where you're at and hopefully make you feel not so alone. Because I know when this happened to me, I was like, no one tells you about this stuff. And all of a sudden, you're in it because it can happen very quickly. So I saw something on one of my friend's social medias on her Instagram because she's going through the same thing. And it said, I don't need to know where my kids are. I don't just need to know where my kids are anymore. I need to know where my parents are too. And that landed because that is exactly what it becomes. So in her situation, she's raising two young children. She's married. She's got a full-time role. Her husband also has a full-time role. And her parents, particularly her father, has gone into a very quick decline health-wise, cognitively. And she is having to help her mum deal with this. And it's happened very quickly. And this is a whole nother level of responsibility that is now fallen on her shoulders. And that is exactly what the sandwich generation is. It's where you might be raising your own children, you're working, you've got your own career, you might be running a business. So you've got your life, and then all of a sudden you're the support or the carer even for your parents. And you're stuck in the middle, hence the sandwich. And this is happening more and more. And as late Gen Ys, Gen Xers in particular, progress over the next couple of years, this is going to be happening so much more. So for me, this played out with my parents. My parents were always very independent. Dad basically ran everything. And unfortunately, this was during COVID time as well, which didn't make it easy. I was managing my business. I was going through my cancer journey. I was very deep in my cancer journey at that stage. Married, trying to keep the business afloat, manage my health, have a relationship with my husband, all the things. And also then pretty much being carer for my parents in terms of I was doing the shopping for them. Then all of a sudden I needed to take over like their full banking. And it just happened really fast. All of a sudden, Dad was very capable, very capable. And it was like a switch flicked and then he wasn't. So his cognitive, what's the word? Slide, I suppose, was really rapid. And all of a sudden you're stuck in the middle. So they don't live close to me. They're actually about, 35 Ks away. And so I'm finding myself managing my life and also their life, worried about when they're getting to appointments, who can take them out of, my sister and I, who can be at this appointment so that we understand exactly what is going on here. Dad was also going through a cancer journey at that stage, and we were getting worried about him driving and being able to retain information from appointments that he was going to. And it really, at that time, it really caught me off guard. And I was not alone in my friendship circle. I had many friends at that time, some of them single, managing their parents or, one parent. And the time, and it's not only the time, it is the mental load that people don't really talk about. Because yes, there's the physical aspect to it, but there's also the mental load, like the worrying about someone else's life on top of your children, your own, your relationship, your career, all of that. So it can become very overwhelming, and it can become very taxing on your own mental health. And I remember having a conversation with one of my friends. I'm like, people don't tell you about this stuff. I had no idea that I was going to need to be doing this. And I'm not sure that there can be like a major announcement as we go through life that be aware this is something that you're going to be going through. But I feel like we do need to be aware. And I wanted to talk about this on two levels, because there's obviously the personal level where you're going through this. You are part of that sandwich generation, which is growing. Then it's also for leaders who are leading people. I want them to really understand how this can be incredibly exhausting, how this can be an absolute legitimate reason why people need to take time off, and something that really needs to be understood and talked about within the workplace. Particularly if someone's behaviors have changed, if they're looking exhausted, if they're not themselves. Because as I mentioned before, it's not just what you do, it's what you carry. And it's the thinking ahead, it's the coordination, it's the worrying, it's the decisions, and having to make decisions for people who don't necessarily want decisions made for them. So there is a lot of resistance, and I'm talking about the parents, and foreseeing what they need before their parents are ready. That can be a massive challenge, and having to have those conversations around, do we need to potentially look at selling the house while you're capable? Do we need to look at where you live next? What that means is we're switching between so many roles, wearing so many hats. We also become another parent to a parent. And so you're not just managing your own life anymore. You are 100% managing theirs as well. And for those who have parents who have that cognitive decline, I think that's another layer of grief. I want to talk about grief for a second, because when you are seeing your parents decline like that, from people who have been so independent to then all of a sudden not, it's like, what's happened to my parents? The people who were looked after me, who were there for me, who were my support, and all of a sudden the roles have switched really quickly. And I feel like there was an element of grief that I went through for my parents. And I also think those who have parents who are going through Alzheimer's, dementia, that sort of health challenge, that's just another level of grief altogether, because you're seeing your parent, you're losing your parent in front of your eyes, even though they're still here. And if that is the situation you're in, I just send you so much love. I just cannot imagine going through that on top of everything else. And it's a really challenging situation. There's so much support out there now, and I hope that you are seeking that. So if you're in this season, whatever version of it is for you, I see you. I see the pressure. I see the decisions. I see the constant thinking. I really do. And I just wanted to touch on this really lightly because when I was in that situation, there was also the dynamic of me being the older sibling. And there's something in that where older siblings can often, not always, seem to want to take the brunt of the responsibility, seem to feel the need to lead. And sometimes in family dynamics, they're very much relied on. I was very lucky that I had my sister to go through all of this with. But it's like this element of wanting to protect her from it because she has a family. You know, she had 2 children who were going through high school at that time, like a really challenging, the latter years of high school, VCE, a really challenging time for them. So there's this element of wanting to protect her from things. You know, I think only older siblings will understand that. So if that is you, I get it. And also there's people who are looking after their parents, not only within the vicinity that they live, but some are having to go interstate to do this and some overseas. So I was speaking to a woman a couple of weeks ago at one of my dinners, and she was having to fly to India to look after her father who was really ill. Now, that type of commitment where you're having to be away from your home, away from your work, completely away on another time zone in another country, that is super challenging. So there's so many dynamics that we need to be aware of. And if you are a leader listening to this, I really want you to understand that this is not necessarily something that people have chosen to do. It's a situation that we find ourselves in. And I really encourage you to understand your team's situation and show compassion for this. Obviously, there's an element of performance that is still needed. And then there's sometimes an element of give and take, because no doubt if you give a little, you're going to get it back. So it's just about having a conversation with that person. And I just want to touch on, there's so many things I want to touch on. I don't want this to be a massively long episode. I just want to say, please don't lose yourself in this. If you're the sandwich generation that I am speaking to here, you will feel exhausted. There is a lot of mental load. You're being pulled from pillar to post. You are wearing so many hats. Please try and invest some time for you. Sometimes you can't be all things to everyone, and you might have to ask for help. You might have to get some carers or some assistance in to help parents, even though they don't want it. It's what they need, and it's also what you need. And I encourage you not to feel bad about that. So many people feel bad about it, but you're not going to be any help to your parents if you get really ill, if you get run down, if you get burnt out. You're not going to be able to help them in the way that you want to, and then that brings a whole other level of emotion that you don't need. So please, I just encourage you to think about that. Think about creating some time for you as well, because you're managing your life. You are the most important person in this situation. So I really hope that this episode has made you feel seen. It's made you feel heard, even validated in terms of maybe feeling alone or feeling frustrated or feeling confused. There is help out there. I am interviewing my financial planner who helped me significantly throughout this whole aged care process, which was like a minefield. So she's going to be on in a couple of episodes. And I just think it really encourage you to speak to people about what do you need in place, like all the legal stuff you need in place, and get some support to help you through managing your Centrelink and the aged care process, all of that sort of thing. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you know someone who is in this situation, please share it with them. And please reach out. Share your stories. I'm on email. I want to support you. And thank you so much for tuning in to this pretty special episode of Leading You. Thank you.